Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. We have, as usual, a stalwart in the area of the life sciences. We actually have Doug Bucklin with us. Doug is a patent lawyer. I believe he has a PhD and is a attorney at Volpe Koenig. And Doug primarily works around the life sciences. But Doug, you want to talk a little bit about yourself before we jump in?
Great. So, yes, I have a PhD. I in biochemistry and microbiology. I still think of myself as a scientist who's gone to the law, to the dark side, as the tool I can use to help serve the life sciences, and so that's what I've devoted the last many years of my life to. Law is my tool. Life sciences and life science businesses are really my passion.
So Doug, let's start with some of the basics here. Why does someone come to the dark side when you have a PhD? Everyone loves scientists right now. No one's ever loved lawyers. Why would you do it?
No one's ever loved a lawyer. So my progression really started like this. I was at the lab bench doing basic research in ribosomal recoding. It's a really cool, fantastic subject. I studied a system where during protein translation, the ribosome would hit a particular place and then jump nucleotides down the mRNA and land precisely and continue coding in order to make the right protein product. And I was studying the signals of that. So really basic research. But to do my research, I was like inventing little gizmos, and little things. And at the end of the day, I was done using the thing. I just throw it away. Around that time, NPR had a piece on patents and patent attorneys, and got me thinking: how does this good stuff from the lab bench get out to the hands of people that need it? I mean, scientists are often very idealistic to save the world, cure diseases, but so if you do, how do you get the cure to people? And so then I started asking those kinds of questions. The person that had sat in the seat I was currently occupying went off and became a patent attorney. And to seal it all off, most of the older generation of my family are all attorneys. So I was the black sheep going off at the time.
You are on the dark side.
So it seemed like kind of coming home to finally accept my fate and become an attorney.
You're literally the Luke Skywalker of your family. You brought the light and the dark together. That's all.
I united the Force.
Okay, so you've united the Force. You've now become a patent attorney, and when I was in law school, being a patent attorney was one of those things that very few people understood. Even few people actually wanted to work in it. And that's primarily because you really need essentially 2 graduate degrees to get there. Obviously, you can do it with less than 2 graduate degrees, but
right.
For better or for worse, that's how they end up playing it. And it's difficult to get hired if you don't have an MD, a PhD, a PharmD, like some kind of doctoral degree combined with the JD.
And I used to think that was really kind of just a hangover of professional bigotry a little bit, like,
right.
Not snooty. I want to find someone that's overeducated. But over the years, I found that it is much easier to train a PhD than it is a non-PhD. There's something that comes in the education of a PhD. Maybe it's just all the background facts and knowledge that we pack into our heads. Maybe it's just the masochism that is us, the details that we study and try to acquire. Maybe that makes the person special. I don't know, but it has been easier to train and deal with other PhDs. It's certainly not prohibitive to non-PhDs. I've worked with plenty of people that do not have a PhD. They're fully capable and extremely competent people.
So we've gone from that period where being a patent agent or a patent lawyer was esoteric to now it's practically required in life sciences to to a space now where we're now talking about, okay, we've got COVID, where companies are spending billions of dollars trying to bring new treatments to market and going, how do I protect them? So, have you seen a stream of companies coming to you talking about protecting this type of intellectual property?
We've had a number of companies coming to us with COVID technologies. Of course, I can't talk about them specifically, but it's a hot topic. People are jumping in to try to solve the problem with the tools that they know. So we have everybody from people are trying to develop new detection assays to people trying to develop cures and vaccines, treatments for the symptoms. Everybody that has something to offer, I think, has jumped in and said, hey, let me try.
Right.
Whether that's driven by altruism or greed, I really don't care. People are jumping in and trying, and let's hope something hits and hits soon.
Yeah. So let's sort of ask that question though, whether it's altruism or greed, because that's going to be the basis. People would argue that if you're pursuing patents, I just read a link somewhere where they said if you're pursuing patents, you're limiting access. If you're limiting access, you're increasing. If you're limiting access, you're increasing cost, and therefore, in the time of COVID, should you really be doing things like patenting products? What is the point of that? How do you, as a patent attorney who's steeped in these types of issues, deal with that question, or do you never get to those questions?
So, well, nuts and bolts patenting, no, we don't get to those questions. But philosophically and with our friends and neighbors and the people that want us to justify ourselves, certainly we get to that. And the basic premise is to think of yourself. If you devote 16 hours of your day every day to try to do something other than going out and finding food and building your house and making your clothes, you need to get paid.
Right.
All of the people that are spending endless hours trying to develop a vaccine or a drug or a treatment or a detection scheme, something that can help solve this crisis, they're not out getting food. They're at the lab bench. They're in their offices preparing the regulatory papers. They're contributing what they can to this effort. They need to get paid. And there's thousands of them that need to get paid in order to bring a vaccine or a drug or anything else like that to the market. The companies have to pay their salaries.
Right.
The companies can't just do it out of the goodness of their hearts. They'll go bankrupt, they'll fire everybody, they'll close, and the cure won't make it to the market. Patents solve that problem. That's my basic spiel. It's a little more complicated and finessed than that, but I think that's the fundamental. You cannot ask people to do things for free when they need to take care of their essentials. They need to eat too.
Okay, fair enough. So let's explore that a little bit more. So in the context of COVID, and we should probably talk about that a little bit more. We talk about vaccines and we talk about bringing them quickly to market. How long does the average patent take to issue?
Well, we banter about some numbers, but file an application with the USPTO to issue, you'd take about 3 years. I've seen it take 6 or even more. It really depends on the technology and how difficult the prosecution is with the USPTO, but good ballpark 3 or 4 years. You can make it go faster. You can pay extra money for prioritized examination, and I've seen that go in 7 months from filing to patent.
Oh,
So you just just have to pay the extra money. On the pharmaceutical company scale, it's not only be $4,000, and they could handle it. So it might be worth it. The patent for COVID patents right now, I took a look. I haven't scrubbed the universe for COVID patents. I found that the Moderna vaccine that's coming out, they've listed some patents that protect it, but it looks like the patents they listed are on the edges. They're talking about the background technology that they use to develop the vaccine. The actual parts of the vaccine, the composition that is the new COVID-19 vaccine from Moderna or from Pfizer, I imagine those are subject to patent applications that have been filed but have not yet issued as a patent. If they have, I'd be glad if anybody out there is aware of them. Send me. I'd like to take a look at them. I haven't found them though. So those background technology patents are protecting how, so I guess we get to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of these vaccines to think about what these patents are protecting.
Yeah, so could you talk to us a little bit about the basics of vaccines? And again, you're not coming at this from the perspective of your PhD, but just to get people informed. When we're talking vaccines, people are talking about scared of them. So could we start from there?
Ancient history, the Salk vaccine and polio, basic strategy, and maybe even more ancient history of smallpox and George Washington at Valley Forge. Way back then, George Washington was involved, and people in his camp were involved with taking basically pus from smallpox pustules and then scratching someone else's arm and putting the pus in there. And that would sometimes pass the disease, but lots of times, because of the unusual route, it would give the recipient resistance to smallpox.
Right.
Zip ahead to the 50s, and we had the polio problem, and Jonas Salk came up with the vaccine. The basic way he did it was making a sick virus and then injecting the sick virus or administering the sick virus to people. The polio vaccine can be administered as a shot or as an oral composition. The shot is a dead virus. So they just take virus and kill it. So it can't replicate. It's defunct. So it's pretty safe. You can inject it. People develop antibodies against it because the foreign body goes into their system. The immune system sees it, develops antibodies, and then it remembers those antibodies. There's memory cells that keep track of the antibodies that have been raised in the past. So if that virus is presented again, the live active virus comes and infects the person, the immune system can mount an immediate and effective response to clear it. And the Salk or the attenuated virus vaccine is you make a sick virus.
Right.
The sick virus does better than the heat-killed virus, but unfortunately, sometimes the sick virus recovers and actually causes the disease. So that kind of vaccine is how we existed for a long time. The new vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines, are really a change in technology. The thinking and the basic research and lab research for this type of vaccine has been around for a little bit, but using them in people is brand new for this virus. So the Pfizer vaccine is what is called an mRNA vaccine. So instead of injecting a whole virus, whether killed or attenuated, you could just inject a part of the virus. That's great. Oh, my screen just went dark. So if you see me doing weird things, I'm trying to revitalize it.
You're fine, by the way, on my side.
So the when you inject a part of a virus, you don't generally get a great response. So how do you make it better? Well, we know from the hold on, from the data that's come out on the Pfizer vaccine that they have a really effective vaccine, and it's kind of like a part, but it's got an interesting new twist to it. Instead of injecting what's called the spike protein from the coronavirus, the name coronavirus is because when you look at the thing in micrographs, it looks like it has a crown on it. And the crown is the spike protein decorating the surface of the virus. And when you see it in 2D, it looks like a crown around it, a corona. And so that spike protein is responsible for that virus binding to the cell. And once it binds to the cell, there's actually a host protease that snips the spike protein, and that mediates the absorption of the virus into the cell. And then the cell hijacks the machine, or the virus hijacks the machinery and makes new viruses. So that spike protein is the business end of mediating the infection. So people have focused on the spike protein as the thing to raise immunity to. Makes sense. So the Pfizer vaccine takes a new twist. They don't inject the protein. They inject a messenger RNA that codes for the protein.
Right.
So we started this talking about, I researched really arcane basic science about messenger RNA and how it's coded. So we're back to mRNA now. So basic molecular biology, you have DNA, which is the source code, and it's accessed to find the instructions, but then a copy is made. The DNA is never deleted or excised. It's preserved as intact there. If the message is needed, a copy is made in the form of messenger RNA, transported out to the cytoplasm where ribosomes translate the nucleic acid mRNA code into protein. So that mRNA is the business of the Pfizer vaccine. They have the mRNA that codes for the spike protein, packaged along with some lipids and other materials that help shepherd the mRNA to the cells and push it inside of the cell. Once it's there, your host ribosomes, your ribosomes, make the spike protein that's called for in the messenger RNA. And that spike protein then raises the immune response. So it's kind of a neat end run around, we don't want to inject the virus. We don't really want to inject the spike protein because subunit vaccines aren't that great.
Right.
And so they tried this mRNA vaccine, and they're showing a really high rates of seroconversion where people are developing antibodies and they're protected. So it seems like a really promising technology.
So, and that's promising technology that's potentially a platform technology, which might be used for other vaccines in the future as well.
Yeah, so mRNA vaccines as a concept are not new. Applying them to COVID-19 and now actually injecting them in people is new.
Right.
So people have had mRNA vaccine patents in the past.
Right.
Some of the Moderna patents I looked at recently are the basic tools on how to make an mRNA vaccine. What are the co-molecules you have to package along with the mRNA to make it effective?
So if that's true,
go ahead.
There's a delay there. Okay. If that's true, here's my question: Who is typically patenting these? Are these actually being done by pharma companies, or are they generally being done in an academic institution, and then that technology is being in-licensed?
Both.
Okay. The reason I ask that question is when you start talking about technology where I've always heard about the virtually integrated pharmaceutical company where they're really bringing in the sales team from one place and they're bringing in the technology from another place. Someone else is doing the clinical research, and basically what they'll end up being is a sales organization. So
acquire and develop rather than research and develop.
Exactly. One of the big arguments I have heard is that, well, why should we pay such a high price for the drug when the technology belongs to academic institutions and they're being paid for by the government?
It's a fair question. And I'd say the experiment has been done. Before the Bayh-Dole Act, anything paid for by the federal government was the property of the federal government, and that was just it. People did get patents, but they were owned by the federal government, and almost nothing was commercialized.
Right.
There was no incentive to do it. So all those good inventions, all that good technology led to almost nothing.
Right.
The Bayh-Dole Act allowed universities to elect to retain ownership. So the fundamentals of patent law are that the inventors, if nothing else is said, are the owners of the invention.
Right. For how long, by the way?
Yeah.
For how long are they owners of the invention?
How long are they owners of the invention? Forever. So for as long as the patent is in existence. So you don't really have any right to do anything with an invention or exclude people from it without a patent right. So when you file a patent application, still you haven't perfected that right. But when a patent issues with a patent claim in it, if nothing else has been said, the inventors have a right to exclude others from the claimed invention.
Right.
And that lasts until the patent expires.
Right.
And that's 20 years from the original filing date. So,
right.
So it lasts 20 years from the filing date of the patent application. So with the Bayh-Dole Act, that changed the status quo. So when people get a federal grant, they sign a contract that says, okay, if I invent, you own it.
Right.
Bayh-Dole Act changes that to university can now, with their employment agreement, say to a professor and postdocs and graduate students, anybody else working there, that their employment agreement says we assign everything to the university.
Right.
And so the university now has ownership, and that's been how things have happened for the last many decades. Technology that's created at the universities is often spun out, often by the professors or postdocs themselves, into a corporation that goes to the research park, and the corporation then in-licenses from the university that technology. And it's that commercial incentive, the patent that gives the people the ability to raise capital, develop the business, develop the technology to a commercializable point, and then actually get a return on investment. That's what really allowed the shift from pre-Bayh-Dole ages. So now technologies come out. And another big thing was the patent law changed to say that anything under the sun made by man was patentable, including biotech inventions. So the Bayh-Dole Act and that Supreme Court decision really opened biotechnology. I think so. The experiment has been done. If you say the federal government paid for it, we should get it for free, then it will be an interesting thing people saw, and not much will come of it.
So let's take that position that it's untenable to give things away for free. Having said that, doesn't the government still continue to have certain rights to the invention
Yes.
under the Bayh-Dole Act?
The Bayh-Dole Act gives the government march-in rights.
Right.
If an invention is sufficiently important that the government feels it needs to horn in and take it and have it used otherwise, there are margin rights. I'm not aware of it ever being used.
I'm not aware of it ever being used either. But you would think that COVID would be one of those times when people go, we need to use those margin rights. Assuming, and again, we don't know that this exists, but assuming you are a company that spent $1 billion, multi-billion dollars over the last year bringing a product to market, should they be worried about the U.S. government coming in tomorrow and saying, we're going to exercise our margin rights?
Well, they should always be worried about people coming in and taking stuff.
Right.
I think the practical reality is that that's not going to happen. I was just looking today, the cost, it's not authoritative. On the web, I saw that the cost of the vaccines per injection of the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are 15 or 20 bucks per injection.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
So whether that's their cost or they're taking a loss, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that they are taking a loss. But the price of the vaccine is not an inhibition to people taking it. The individual.
Right.
I don't know of many individuals in the United States that could not come up with 20 bucks.
Right.
And
right.
those that can't, there's plenty of people that will give it to them. So I don't think there's in the United States an economic push to give away the COVID vaccines for free. The companies have already arranged a price scheme that's satisfied that urge.
So let's take the opposite version of that story, which is you may have read somewhere that a government entity, and no one really knows which one, hacked into the European Medicines Agency and stole the data for vaccines. And no one knows whether there have been allegations that it's China, there have been allegations that it's Russia, but no one really knows. The question in play is, did they even have to do that? Or could they say, you know what, we should have rights like that? I guess they don't have rights under the Bayh-Dole Act. What else could they have rights under to do something like that from a technology perspective?
I'm not sure I quite get the question. What could a competitor do to get into the market?
Well, what I was referring to is that the first part of the question I was phrasing was, give me a second. Actually Bob Solomon just responded, and he says hello. He says he's enjoying the conversation, and he did say that he has seen the Army exercise such rights, which I was not aware of, to be honest, under the Bayh-Dole Act.
I'd be interested to know about that case.
Yeah.
Bob, send it to me.
Bob knows how to reach you, so that should not be a problem, Doug. But let's take the next situation, which is we know that there are countries in this world that want the technology that don't have it right now. Question is, and they've gone as far as to, and cost has been a concern. They've gone as far as to tell these, to hack into government systems to get the technology. The question I have is, are there other mechanisms for companies to get the data and to get the technology so that they can give drugs to their patients without a high cost?
Sure. So as far as regulatory data goes, I'm not sure of the regulatory schemes outside of the United States, and I'm not sure they need to get that regulatory data in order to move forward. But as far as patents are concerned, I'm certain that pharmaceutical patents or pharmaceutical companies in this game are filing globally, or at least have PCT applications in queue with plans to go global. If patent rights mature, the TRIPS agreement will allow any nation that feels that there is an emergency and needs this technology without paying a price that may be too high for them. The TRIPS agreement gives them compulsory license rights. So they can authorize an entity in their country to make, use, and sell the vaccine or the drug, whatever it is. They can authorize that activity under a compulsory licensing scheme under TRIPS, so the trade-related aspects of intellectual property agreement. And the original TRIPS agreement included the compulsory license statements, but it required that the government or the entity that wanted to essentially be the generics manufacturer, that they engage in a negotiation with the innovator first and try to obtain a license, and then show that they tried, but they weren't able to reach an agreement that worked. Revitalizing my computer again. In 2001, the Doe agreement changed that scheme a bit.
Okay.
The basics of it are intact, but this new version said if there is an emergency, including an epidemic like we find ourselves in today, there's no need to first have a negotiation with the innovator company. The government can declare the emergency and the compulsory license would be set. Now, the compulsory license does require that the generics manufacturer pay something, but what that something is going to be set on what the government at issue feels is fair. So if it's occurring in, I'm drawing a blank. I'm trying to think of a well-to-do country that might implement it versus a less well-to-do country. The compulsory license might have different terms and different rates, but there are mechanisms for it to happen. And that was all put in place for this idea that you should be compassionate. And if there are people around the world that can't afford it, you should give them a mechanism to be able to obtain it.
Which sounds really great in theory, but we haven't seen anyone talking about exerting a compulsory license. Why have we not seen that so far?
My guess is that the companies themselves have gotten out in front of it and just decided that they're going to be charitable in the first instance. I don't know that.
Okay.
But
so
go ahead. You got it.
So I guess my question then becomes, let's assume, or companies have simply not entered the country. Is there anything in the TRIPS agreement that says that you have to be in that country for your technology to have for a compulsory license to actually be exerted?
So the original TRIPS agreement, the compulsory license was entirely in-country scheme. So the generics manufacturer could make, use, and sell the patented item within that country.
Right.
The Doe agreement changed that scheme also and allows export to other needy countries. So one country can use this compulsory licensing scheme to feed the need in a neighboring country where people are deprived and need some help.
Okay. So theoretically, say for argument's sake, India could take the technology from the US because they found it through the data, whatever it is, reverse engineered it, and then sell it in Saudi Arabia, theoretically. Would that be?
Well, these schemes are all for patents in the nations themselves. So the US patent doesn't do anything for the ability to make, use, or sell a drug or vaccine or anything in India. This agreement helps producers in India and their neighbors if there is a patent in India.
Right.
So if there's a patent in India that says, gives the innovator the right to exclude everybody in India from making and using and selling the vaccine, then the Indian government could force the compulsory license, and then the manufacturer in India could produce the vaccine, distribute it within India, and to people in need outside of India.
Got it. That's fascinating because that's not a conversation you're seeing too much of. Does the patent have to have issued for a company to exclude, or can you say that I have a patent in play and therefore I have rights?
But technically, you don't have a patent right until the patent issues. So you have no right to exclude people. Now,
By the way, Bob does clarify, probably not Saudi Arabia, maybe Bangladesh, but sure. I agree with Bob.
Yep. Once you have a patent pending, though, so you filed the application and the patent hasn't issued yet, many countries, including the U.S., have what's called provisional rights or some variant of that term.
Yeah.
And the way it operates is once the patent application publishes, the public is put on notice that you're trying to acquire this right over this invention. And if you succeed and a claim issues that's substantially the same as the one that published, and someone after it published said, "That's a good idea, I'm going to do that." Well, you can tell them, "I'm going to get a patent on that and you're going to owe me money." And if it comes true, you get the patent, then you can go back to that person and say, "Give me a royalty for all the stuff you sold between the time it published and the time the patent issued. And by the way, now that the patent's issued, get out."
Right.
So
but now, what would the appropriate royalty be? Or could you say that royalty going back should have had a compulsory license, therefore no payment?
I'm not aware of how the TRIPS agreement treats provisional rights. It's an interesting question.
Okay, fair enough.
It'd be fun to speculate on, but I just don't know the answer. I think it's a great question.
Fair enough. So we've now got a situation where these companies and these countries have rights. They still haven't asserted them. We've created a homegrown list of viruses, if you will, vaccines, if you will. So it's going to be really interesting, and I feel like it's going to be interesting to monitor as we continue. Doug, any last points? We're already well over what we thought, the amount of time we thought. So any last comments before we stop?
Oh, last comments. I could go on for hours. I like I said, science is really what drives me in all these interesting, fascinating things. But law is the tool. And so if you gave me the platform, I'd start being a professor and start diagramming messenger RNAs and on it. So you don't want that. So
okay, let me phrase it.
No, be happy to talk to anybody who's interested in it. I can go on for hours, and especially, hey, what kind of social interaction do you get? This is the most I've talked to anybody in 3 days.
Well, I'm glad I'm talking to you, Doug. If they do want to reach you, how do they reach you?
You can reach out to me at Volpe Koenig. If you go to our website, Volpe or volpekoenig.com, you can find me there. And my email is dbucklin@vklaw.com.
Excellent. Doug, thank you again for coming on. This was wonderful.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Take care.